Greetings and welcome to Beatles Stuffology. We're two old friends sit around and talk BS, Beatles stuff, on a track-by-track basis, pretty much for the sake of it. My name is JG McQuarrie, and I'm here with my co-host Andrew Deacon. Say hi, Andrew.
Hello. How
How
are you
are you
doing?
doing? Oh, in
Same
stereo.
time. Oh, jinx. Oh, no, it's all gone wrong within 1 minute.
Yeah, but the question still stands. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm feeling in a benevolent mood. And one of the things I'm going to be benevolent about is something that everybody else finds it quite hard to be benevolent about, and that's James Corden. More of that later. I've
Right.
got a question for you actually.
Mm.
We've been watching. So, listener, you may recall that the good lady her indoors and I had a holiday in Wales. As part of that, we went to Portmeirion. Portmeirion, big influence, or made a big impression on the Beatles and also on Brian Epstein. But trying to talk with the other half about the cultural significance of Portmeirion in terms of the prisoner it was quite difficult to explain the prisoner. And even though she spent time in the shop there that is dedicated to the prisoner, still couldn't really get a sense of what it was all about. So we watched the first episode together. And so my question to you, I know you're a big fan of the prisoner. My question to you is, has it always been pretty bad?
Well, I would firstly contest that it's pretty bad, inevitably, but you are right. I am a big fan of it. It's a real period piece. There are few shows which are quite as locked in time as The Prisoner. It could only have been produced in the late 60s. The attitudes, the paranoia, the style of it, the way that it's shot, the and also drama just isn't shot like that anymore and hasn't been for a good 30 odd years.
The
But
terrible acting. The terrible,
well, I'll
terrible acting.
certainly contest that as far as Mr. McGowan is concerned, because I think he's phenomenal in it.
Oh.
But the other thing I would also say is the first episode is by no means the best episode, not by a very long shot.
It's
Yeah.
in what, the top 14 or 15? How many
Yeah,
episodes were
yeah,
there?
something like that. It's a perfectly cromulent introduction to the series, but it doesn't really show off the thing that the show does. That is
I
its
just
best.
it struck me because I suspect that I first watched it. There was that point, wasn't there? Maybe early 90s when Channel 4 started showing it again. I can't
Yeah.
remember precisely when. It was. I think it was not probably not that long after the Vic Reeves' Big Night Out and the Japanese Godzilla movies. Sort of around that point. And I don't remember it being so. Oh, I'm going to say devoid of humour. It's trying so hard to be both earnest, serious, and surreal, and it kind of misses on all of them. And I have to say, I think Mr. McGowan does a very poor line in frustrated. He's meant to be such an intelligent character, but his character does not come across as intelligent in any way, shape, or form, and his acting is remarkably one note. It just is so dated that there you go. I've just realised that I've actually got Audacity open on my screen in front of me, so I can't see whatever gestures you might be making in the background. But that's probably a good thing at the moment.
I'm trying not to make too many gestures in the background. But yeah,
Suffice to say,
it's
we did not make it through the entire episode. It's quite long as well.
yeah, that's the other thing about it. Even by sort of contemporary standards, those episodes tend to run long. We get very used to the idea of shows like that being a fairly tight 45 minutes, but it's not. It drifts up to sort of 50, 52 minutes in places. And like I said, like drama isn't produced like that anymore. It might have seemed a lot more reasonable when we were watching it sort of in the early 90s, because that's kind of the cutoff point. A lot of that, what used to be called sort of rep theater television, and things like Doctor Who, like Seven, they all fall into that. But so did early episodes of The Bill, and so did all those kind of shows, lots of soap operas. And TV just isn't made like that anymore, and you fall out of the habit of watching TV in that style. Things are much tighter now, and sort of technological developments mean that it doesn't It shows the gulf between then and now much more clearly than it would have been sort of delineated in the early 90s when that style of television was just coming to an end. I Claudius is another perfect example, by the way. It's a great example of like the very best of kind of rep theater television. But yeah, TV just isn't made like that anymore. Okay, we've made it to 7.5 minutes and we haven't
Move on.
actually talked about the Beatles yet. Do you think we should probably do that?
Loser, loser.
Yeah, I'm sorry to drag us back on topic, but somebody has to. So this week, yeah, we have to cover I'm a Loser. What do you reckon?
Um, so this to me is a really good example of where it's perfectly possible to like a song, but not necessarily like its constituents part a great deal. I think it's a really really decent song. It's jaunty, but the jauntiness of the melody is countermanded by the apparent sadness of the lyrics. Um, and everyone's doing a perfectly good job. McCartney's bass is fabulous on the chorus. I don't know what George Harrison's guitar solo is all about, but I have a question about that later. It's coming. It's in my notes. Let's not get
Okay.
into that too soon. The harmonica playing's fine. The singing's okay, apart from the low note. Yeah, it's fine. But when you dig into it, then you start to go, oh, actually, I'm not quite so sure this really works. So my basic point is just enjoy listening to the song. Don't analyze it too much. So over to you, JG, for the analysis.
Okay, lovely. It's a perfectly good song. I do agree that it's one where the constituent parts are probably not up to all that much individually, but put together they work. Get Back is a lot like that as well, actually. There's not much to
Hmm.
get back, but it works really, really well when you actually sort of screw it all together. And I'm a Loser feels like it's very much in that category. There's only half a dozen chords here. It's a really fun song to play. I've been playing it a lot recently with my other half. He, as I think I previously mentioned in the podcast, he plays bass, and I play rhythm guitar to a reasonably adequate standard. And yeah, it's a fun one to play. You're right about the bass line. It's a really great bass line, and it kind of in a way sort of saves the song a little bit because I think it might be a bit pat otherwise, but it's a cracking bass line. It's really, I think, the best thing about the song.
It it feels like in the chorus as though it's got a much punchier rhythm to it as well. It feels like it's going a lot faster than anything else in order to really drive it forward.
Yeah, it definitely does, and yeah, Ringo's doing good work here as well. It's not his standout in the album. We'll get to that, but he's doing really solid work. George is back doing his country and western thing, which honestly works well on this song. I think it starts to wear its welcome out as we get through the album a little bit because it's a bit it gets a bit repetitive after a while, but we're only on track two, and we don't want to dive too far into the album as yet. But it's fine for what it does. It sounds nice and chunky. There's some good support work going there. I've just realized, of course, it's God, it's that lead line as well. You mentioned that before, right? You mentioned the redundancy of the guitar solo briefly. So
Well, yeah, and okay. In which case, I'll get to my question now.
okay.
Is the guitar solo one of the most superfluous ever recorded, sir?
Good question, student. Yeah, it's pretty redundant. It's not really a song that has a desperate need for a guitar solo other than to give George Harrison something to do in the song. There's not an awful lot more to it than that. So I suppose it depends whether you care how much George does in a song. If you think that it's important that he's there and contribute something, then it's not superfluous. If you think it doesn't really matter and the song would benefit from him not being there, then yeah, it's pretty unnecessary.
So I wonder then what fans of Spandau Ballet would make of a question like that. A band that had a dedicated saxophonist.
Well,
So
I mean,
would you therefore insist on there's saxophone in each and every song? We'd say, well, it's not a real Spandau Ballet song if whatever his name is, Steve. I think all saxophonists are called Steve. If
I mean,
Steve isn't playing something on this,
that whole band is unnecessary. So I don't think singling out one instrumentalist in it is particularly necessary.
it's just
Sorry
an
to all the
example I could
Spandau
think
Ballet
of.
fans that are tuning into this
Well,
podcast.
I can remember watching on I think it might have been Jonathan Ross's Last Resort, and this is a very specific reference. It's just come to me. Simply Red doing Holding Back the Years, and I mean I think there was pretty much a little bit of strumming, a piano, maybe some rim shots by the drummer. But I was looking at it thinking, but that's not the whole band. Where's the whole band? Surely that's a bit unfair that they've not included the whole. I mean, I was young. I was very young at the time. It's so. I don't know. Did they have to give everyone a moment in every song? Was that part of their raison d'être, or could they just, for those fans of the Stuffology bingo card, they would have already ticked it off? Is it just okay for someone to be doing some solid work on this one?
Well, I don't think we're quite at the stage where having somebody come forward to do their song and pushing the rest of the band to the background is really de rigueur. I'm adding a new entry to the bingo card for future listens. It's they're a solid four piece, so that's what you get
Fair
in the
enough.
songs at this point. You get a solid four piece that will start to change. Well, pretty much on the next album actually, but we're not just there yet. So I think it's part of the evolution of both the band and sort of music in general. If you've got four people in your band at this point, you get four people in a song.
Because the harmonica work here by John Lennon is really good. It's a perfectly fine harmonica solo that fits with the song, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's almost as though they've had this little discussion and said, "All right, George, we'll give you a little bit. Hey, why don't you basically strip down and redo that solo from All My Loving, and we'll just chuck that in here to get us back to the point where we start singing again."
Yeah, that's not unfair. That's not unfair at all. I suppose if we're talking about harmonica, it does give us the opportunity to have the inevitable Bob Dylan conversation, which apparently seems to be unavoidable when it comes to this song.
Yeah, but I can't work out why, because
It's a
apart
fair
from the
question.
harmonica, this sounds completely unlike most Bob Dylan songs that you'd want to have a conversation about. Um, I, I think I think it comes up because he's being all introspective, and displaying that sort of inner sensitivity. I don't know. I mean, in my mind, it's a lot like that conversation between. Okay, going even weirder on beyond the Spandau Ballet references now. From Blackadder the Third, the episode in which um, Blackadder tries to get Baldric into Parliament, and you've got Pitt the Younger being played by a teenager, who says to Blackadder, I've got this sort of downy hair developing on my chest. Is that normal? Also, I get so confused and lonely. I've written a poem about it. Maybe you'll understand. Why do nice girls hate me? That's what I think of when I look at the lyrics from this.
That's an excellent reference, and I will never criticize anybody for making a good Blackadder reference. Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I think introspective in charge of a harmonica is probably exactly the reason that people compare it to Dylan. But when you hear like the inevitable Dylan comparisons, like I understand why you've got to hide your love away gets those kind of comparisons. But yeah, it feels a bit. It feels like that thing people do where they compare themselves to something better than themselves in order to make that thing seem better. And I have a feeling that might slightly be the case with I'm a Loser. Like, it's a perfectly decent song. It's not an all-time classic. It's not a disaster, but it's good enough. But if you then go, oh well, of course this is Lennon entering his Dylan phase and blah blah blah. It's kind of like elevating the song by sort of reflected glory, I suppose. And I'm not sure that this is a song which can quite carry the weight of that. I do think when we get to You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, okay, there's a lot more to dig into there and a lot more reason for that comparison to stand. But here, like, what Dylan song do you think this sounds like? One,
Well,
not you. I'm
yeah,
not accusing you,
no,
but yeah,
no,
what Dylan song
absolutely,
does this sound like? It
absolutely.
doesn't really sound that much like Dylan, except it's a bit introspective and it's got a bit of harmonica on it. Well, that's not really enough to go on, I don't think.
I think there's a link that you could make to that second or third album syndrome. You know, that old theory where people have been playing together for this bunch of songs, then they record that bunch of songs, and then they've got 18 months from the record company to record the next bunch of songs, and of course they haven't written them yet, and they've got to do it in a hurry. Songs that they've honed for years, and there's something similar. So I think, you know, the key point is that they were very good at creating songs in that style of Black American music, and eventually bettering them because they'd been playing that kind of music for a long, long time. But the Dylan influence is new, so they couldn't really be expected to meet that standard. And, you know, while it's perfectly fine, it's always going to be like a hollow version of Dylan. And in the year that we're talking about, Dylan recorded 14 songs for another side of Bob Dylan in June '64. 11 made it on the album. And you kind of then have to start thinking, yeah, let's think about all the songs that perhaps Dylan was doing in '62, '63, '64, maybe into '65. What was he going for? Was it Blowing in the Wind, Masters of War, Girl from the North Country, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, The Times They Are A-Changing, All I Really Want to Do, Chimes of Freedom, It Ain't Me, Babe? This doesn't come close because it's a first step at having a go at. You know, you can't expect. He would refer to it as, oh, that was my Dylan phase. But I would hope that even Leonard would appreciate the fact that Dylan was the master of doing this kind of song at this point, that introspective, emotional sort of, but then, you know, using metaphors to layer everything onto a much wider stage. You know, and so I think trying to give it something more than it's got is setting it up to fail. Whereas if you sort of think, okay, right, well, let's think about some of the good elements here. Well, at least he's not making a direct appeal to the woman saying, "Oh, please come back because I'm going to die without you," as some of his earlier songs have done. So it's not a direct appeal. There is a sense that there's some internal monologuing going on. That's fine. It feels like questions are being asked either of someone else, in a sense of, well, tell me what I can do. I really want to know. But I think it works better if you read him as internalizing these thoughts, even if those thoughts do make him sound like a whiny, miserable, pathetic, sad, lonely loser.
Yeah, well, it's very nice of him to tell us, what's going
Yeah,
on. So, it's, he's not being entirely introspective this time out because he's had the kindness and generosity to inform us that, the reason for this whole soliloquy of the song is so that we, the audience, don't make the same mistake that he's made, which is just, I think, it really speaks to such a generosity of spirit.
he's known for his generosity at this point, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely. That's always what people think of when they think of John Lennon, especially in the early '60s. But yeah, I mean, you're right in terms of the songs that he that this is be. If you're going to compare this to anything, you should be comparing it to "I'll Follow the Sun" or "Every Little Thing." Those songs are more kind of pertinent than sort of the Dylan thing, not because necessarily that they're Beatles songs, although that also, but because I'm a Loser does prefigure where things are going to go on Rubber Soul. I would definitely argue that Every Little Thing does as well. And yeah, maybe I'll Follow the Sun too. And so that feels like a more relevant sort of point of comparison. Like you said, these are the beginnings of what's going to go. And that's why again, I don't want to talk too much about the album, but it's why Beatles for Sale sometimes feels, I think, a bit broken back because those kind of songs do look forward, but so much of this album doesn't. It looks back in order to basically just get something down so that they can get a record out. And yeah, I'm a Loser. It's fine, but the Dylan comparison doesn't work. And comparing it to the other songs on the album seems a bit more fruitful to me, I would think.
Yeah, and I mean, lyrically, it's inconsistent. There's some nice things in there.
Hmm.
I quite like my tears are falling like rain from the sky. That's fine. We've got the whole tears of a clown motif going on, I suppose. I should have known she would win in the end.
Hmm.
Win. I think that's evidence of. I'll just throw that word in because it feels like it fits, and that's okay. But it's always worth yeah, just having a quick look at things like genius.com, which is an absolutely wonderful, hilarious crowdsourced website, for lyrical analysis. Because on this, click on the line, "My tears are falling like rain from the sky." Whoever the contributor has very helpfully said that John is using a simile. Rain falls very fast and very hard. Simile, he is crying torrential tears. He is very upset. And then under that, there's a picture of someone kneeling on the ground with their palms down, head down, and it looks like they've been soaked by the rain. It's wonderful stuff. But despite all of that, what's clear is that they liked it, or maybe because of Lennon thinking it was his Dylan phase. Maybe they could drag out the harmonica because it was big on the live act in '65 in particular. So they seem to enjoy playing it. Even George seemed to enjoy that guitar solo. I don't know. It's a funny one, isn't it? But not that many people seem to have enjoyed covering it, as far as I could see.
No, there doesn't seem to be an awful lot. I know there's a Marianne the Faithful version out there. I must admit, I haven't done due diligence this week and listened to it, so I actually don't really know whether it's any good or not.
I have listened to it, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And it's perfectly okay, but actually, I don't have a huge amount of experience to listen to Marianne Faithfull records, but if that is an example, her enunciation is not very good, because I wasn't quite sure what she was going on about for the first part. But there you go, that's okay. The one cover that did take my eye, and this links back to the start of the episode, is Mr. James Corden. And
yes.
it's from kids' TV show called Beat Bugs, which is got to be worth investigating at some point, because somehow this children's TV producer got the Beatles to agree to let him use a song in each episode of this kind of Bugs Life type program. In fact, the episodes are loosely based around the theme of that song, and some of so therefore obviously some of them are absolutely hilarious. Maybe there isn't a "Why Don't We Do It in the Road" episode. I'm pretty sure there isn't a "Sexy Sadie" episode, but there's a lot. There are a lot of episodes. It's quite funny looking through and seeing how they make use of them in the plot. But James Corden, like him or, well, most people don't at the moment, but he knows how to belt out a tune, and it's very polished and very well produced. As I've written down here, James Corden, Beat Bugs. It's really good. Sorry, everyone.
Okay, that covers that. I haven't heard it, so I cannot comment as to the quality or otherwise of Mr. Corden's pipes.
I do highly recommend that you look into Beat Bugs, though.
I fully intend to. I must admit, you've recommended it to me before, and I forgot about it. And now you've reminded me. I have added it back into my mental checklist of things I need to do. So it's on my homework list. I promise I will watch it. It does. I did look it up on Netflix. It does look kind of weird and interesting, and so I'm really curious to see it. Yeah,
and it's there's a little moral, and it's great. Parents can watch it with their kids, and so on and so forth. But I just think it's fascinating that the Beatles were happy for so many of their songs to be licensed in this way, and that they're notoriously tight-fisted about their material. So good on them.
a good thing to watch for a parent and child. What better recommendation could you possibly have? I have nothing else to say about this song.
Can I just say that with your voice there, and the way you were saying that was your "I'm about to end the episode" voice.
You're correct. Unless there's something else you want to discuss. We've not done a great job of talking about the actual song, but I think most of the runtime will be diversions rather than the songs itself. But if there's something else you've got to cover, please don't let me stand in your way.
The song's fine. It's
right.
6 out of 10, perfectly fine.
6 out of 10. All right, there we go. I think I'm going to give it slightly more. I think I'll give it 7 out of 10. I do quite like it. I do enjoy it, and that bass line is an absolute killer. So I think I'm going to go for 7 out of 10 on this one.
Excellent.
Fabulous. Good. Let's wrap it up there then. You can really get a hold of us. You can really get a hold of us by email. We are BeatlesStuffology@gmail.com. We are on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called this week at Beatles_ology. We're Beatles Stuffology on Instagram, and you can find my blog at www.jgmcquarrie.scot, and you can read Andrew's writing at www.stuffology.co.uk. Please also check out my other podcast, Talking Trek to You, where a noob and an expert go through the original Star Trek series episode by episode. Please like, rate, and review us on whatever podcatcher you're using so that other people can find the show. Next episode, we carry our merry way through the album and we talk about Babies in Black. But until then, be seeing you.